I know I've been doing a lot of heavy content lately, what with the constant descent into fascism we've been enduring, so I decided to switch things up by having a little bit of fun. Now, my idea of fun might not be the same as your idea of fun, because we're going to look at a definition. No, we're going to be looking at the word epigenetics. While I can get a gist of the definition through contextual clues, gists aren't really good enough for scientific definitions. And given the frequency with which it comes up in discussions around the notion of creation, it would be impolitic of me to allow it to continue without some pushback. I'm not saying that I have any kind of special knowledge. What I am saying is that it takes very little research for even a layman to realize that creationists are funneling us pure balderdash. The same thing is still going on with quantum mechanics and from many different avenues. I'll probably do a video about this phenomenon later, but for now, let's stick with epigenetics. So, what is epigenetics? To put it simply, it is the study of changes in organisms caused by modification of gene expression rather than alteration of the genetic code itself. Or, as a number of more technical videos than mine put it, is the code above the code. And when we get into it, it makes perfect sense. So what I'm going to do instead is watch one particular video put out by young earth creationists. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you watch the whole thing, but a link will be in the description for those who want to watch this train wreck for themselves. Specifically by two doofuses. Their names are Richard Fangrad and Calvin Smith from Creation Ministries International. I'm going to have to practice patience. I keep wanting to interject my 2 cents into these statements that they keep throwing around during the first 2 minutes, like, we have a 4-letter code which makes us up. But if I were to do that, this video would never get done. So instead, we're going to have to pick out various claims from their video and talk about them briefly. And we're going to start at a little bit before 2 minutes in. Here we go.
Right. And, well, things have even gotten more unbelievable for materialists since DNA was discovered.
Right.
Back in 2005, a group of researchers published a landmark study on a question that's been long puzzling geneticists. Why aren't identical twins identical?
Yeah.
Considering that they have the same DNA sequence in each of their cells, it seems a bit strange that they might, possess significant numbers of physical differences,
Yep.
such as different fingerprints, different susceptibilities to disease. And so this raises the question, if two people can have identical DNA sequences and yet be so different, is there more to our genetic blueprint than just DNA? And the answer, of course, is an emphatic yes.
Yes, yeah. Many people are familiar with DNA, but fewer are aware that the DNA code itself is governed by another code, a code known as the epigenetic code. This code is so significant that one science writer said that genes, so stretches of DNA, are little more than puppets, is the way it was described. Whereas the enzymes controlling this other code are really the master puppeteers, is the terminology that he used.
So what have researchers found? Put simply, identical twins possess the same DNA code, but different epigenetic codes.
Right.
They found that the epigenetic codes of identical twins, though indistinguishable during their early years of life, can diverge markedly as they age. Also, epigenetic differences were greater in identical twins that lived apart and that had, of course, different lifestyles.
Right. Mutations in the DNA are often regarded as the chief culprits of disease, but epigenetic errors can have equally devastating effects. Biologists have known since the 1970s that DNA in cancer cells, for example, has an unusually high level of methylation, suggesting that crucial genes may be switched off. Now, methylation is a process by which
There was a significant jump in concept when we went from talking about this second genetic code into talk of methylation, with none of the intervening steps being explained. So let me see if I can't catch you up. He was kind of right, but mostly wrong, when he said that this was like a second genetic code. When you were born, your genes were, for the most part, clean. Because when two gametes get together, most of the epigenetic code is stripped off of the newly formed embryo's genetic material, and new tags are added. It is through the course of living that your genes are told to do different things. It's also how cells know which form to take. For that, there are two separate mechanisms through which gene expression can be altered. One way is by either adding or removing methyl tags directly to genes, methylation. and the other is by the regulation of histones, which are the things used to wind DNA. If the histone is compacted, the genes won't express, and its effect is opposite when loosened, so that when you have, for example, a liver cell, all of the genes that tell it to be a kidney are turned off. So that at least should provide you with the bare bones of what Fangrad and Smith left out. Now, this isn't to say that they don't ever tell you this. They do much, much later. But it would have been useful to know from the beginning. And researchers are looking into whether or not these diseases are attributable to epigenetic markers, because if they can find a link, we are one step closer to curing the disease. You take a legitimate and hopeful question and turn it into an opportunity to point at it now and ask, after 2.7 billion years of evolution, well, how did it get this way? Unbelievable. And oh my gosh, the commercials that they put into it are pure gold. So no matter how much I want to, I won't be distracted. It's just going to be another video idea. But that's a good one.
Methyl groups, these are chemicals that come from methane, are added to the DNA.
Right. And tumor suppressor genes, as their name suggests, are required for normal development. And several instances have been found where these are switched off by methylation and directly linked to cancer. Alternatively, researchers have noted that cancer genes, oncogenes, can be activated through demethylation.
Methylation.
Yes. However, adding or removing chemical groups can reverse epigenetic changes, so the race is now on to develop drugs that control key epigenetic enzymes.
Yeah. One such drug has already been approved in the U.S. to treat a type of pre-leukemia, and even common dietary components such as green tea can prevent or reverse the effects of cancer by inhibiting certain enzymes and reactivating switched off genes. It's quite fascinating.
So cancer research...
It's really weird, because it seems like you almost get it, you're almost there, and then you just take a 180 turn and just reverse yourselves. Because you go so far as to acknowledge the fact that people are actually looking into epigenetics for the purposes of discovering whether or not, like I said, cures can be found because epigenetic markers have been found. That wouldn't be possible if they just said, well, I guess God did it. No need to go further. Anyway, I'll get into that later.
However, is just the tip of the iceberg. What causes schizophrenia or autism?
Right.
Why are children born through in vitro fertilization more likely to have epigenetic disorders? These are key questions epigenetic researchers hope to answer.
Yeah, the added levels of complexity that scientists are discovering within living things is mind-boggling, truly staggering. And of course, it's no help to the theory of evolution, because they have to explain how interlinking code could possibly have arisen at the same time. And we'll explore these amazing discoveries in more detail in just a few minutes.
Okay. This is where their claim of interlinking codes is made very explicit and very wrong. I see what they're trying to do, they're just so damn bad at it. They are trying to make a similar argument to the irreducible complexity of various organs argument, championed by Michael Behe in the early aughts. The first thing to point out is that, just like with Behe's argument, there is no evidence that both systems had to evolve at the same time. For instance, there's nothing that says that a lens had to be developed at the exact same times as a cornea. On top of that, even if they did evolve at the same time, nowhere in there is a designer necessary. I can think of a number of ways that both systems can evolve, and in none of them is a designer called for. The methyl groups, for example, could have existed without life altogether, and only coincidentally found themselves with different functions due to the presence of RNA or DNA. Or these methyl groups didn't exist in their present form until RNA and or DNA had been firmly established. Just because we don't know is no reason to think that God did it is an adequate explanation. Nothing is learned from that kind of thinking. We're going to skip ahead to about 9:49.
Exactly. Well, the famous evolutionary biologist Theodosius Dobansky once claimed that nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. Well, if this statement were true, you'd expect that unraveling the complexities of the epigenetic control would rely strongly on the light of evolution. But as one researcher candidly admitted, while the role of epigenetic inheritance is in development is becoming a major subject of biological research, the study of its implications for evolution is lagging far behind.
Wow. So here we have yet another example where biological research has flourished without any need for evolutionary belief or speculation. But now that we know the DNA has another layer of coded instructions and thus another layer of complexity, will more scientists attribute this to an intelligent designer? Seriously doubt it. DNA already has some pretty
Okay, they go from an utterly unremarkable statement from Dobansky, because in general, this is literally true. For the last 150 years or so, it has literally been true that an evolutionary understanding of life was necessary in order to further research. And that's where we get fields such as embryology or evolutionary psychology. Anyway, they go from one statement from Dobansky to one from Jablonka, in which they say that epigenetic research's implications for evolution are lagging behind. Therefore, that must mean that it was all done without evolution in mind. What was that first study you brought up? That's right. That thing where geneticists were puzzled by twins getting duplicate genes but still ending up different. How does one conduct a genetics experiment without taking evolution into account? How does that work? In fact, almost all biological research has to take the fact of evolution into account. They go on for another 17 minutes or so, and half the time is spent dogging on Darwin. I don't see what... Anyway, it's neither here nor there. Evolution would be true regardless of anything having to do with Darwin. I don't know why they keep sticking to this. And then another bit of time is spent explaining, for example, the fact that I explained. The two methods of gene expression change is brought about. I just did it a lot earlier. There's only so much of this I can handle before brain cells begin to die. But I hope to illustrate a very important point. A lot of quasi and pseudoscientific quackery, including young earth creationism, is perpetuated by people's lack of knowledge, specifically in those fields where not much is known. For example, in the 70s, a lot of people got really into quantum everything, including philosophy. I shake my head remembering my copy of Fritjof Capra's The Tao of Physics. Anyway, now it's epigenetics, until some new fad comes along, or the practitioners of epigenetics are able to make their voices heard over the din of humanity. Wow, that took a dark turn at the end. Anyway, if you'd be interested in seeing more of my content and to always be notified of anything new I put out, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. If you like this video, please hit like. If not, you know what to do. And please leave a comment below. If you'd like to help me continue improving my channel, please consider visiting my Patreon page and becoming a patron for as little as $1 monthly, or to my PayPal account for a one-time donation. You can find me on Twitter or Facebook under the name PanicClown. As usual, my Discord and Instagram pages are up, but that's about it. Anyway, catch you on the flip side.